Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another exciting version of MASSP's Leader to Leader. And as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, we had a new epidemic order that also kind of comes into play with this session that we had planned for today. So that was timely. And we're going to be talking about year-end events and kind of what we can plan for. Of course, as we do this, it's always with the most current information in mind, knowing that things are always subject to change. So people are introducing themselves in the chat. If you are not familiar with Zoom, which I find hard to believe at this point in time, but just in case, if you scroll at the bottom of your screen, you will notice that different buttons pop up and you will see that there is a chat function. You can click on chat and make sure that you have it set to both panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your comment in the chat. Great to see so many MASSP board members with us today. Always good to have our president, Andy Kowalczyk from Bay Central with us. And you will also notice at the bottom of your screen a Q&A function. So if you have a question during today's session, if you would actually post it in the Q&A rather than in the chat, that would be great. The chat is just kind of for collegial comments, but the Q&A is actually what we're going to reference. Ryan has also pulled up the next slide, which is basically reminding you that we will be recording today's session and the slide deck will also be available. So everybody that registered for today, we will send you a follow-up email after this presentation with a link to the presentation itself, a recording, as well as the slides that all of our presenters are going to share with us today. So who do we have with us? We have quite the all-star cast, I can tell you that right now. We've got Jennifer Bustard, our past president of MASSP from Mona Shores High School. We have Steve Carlson, who is also a past president and a former principal of the year with us today from Sandusky Junior Senior High School. We have Joe Esper, the principal from Traverse City West High School, also a MASSP board member. Amy Henry, the principal at Carter Middle School, and Katie Pennington from Holland High School. And subbing in today from Kalamazoo Central High School, we have Jamie Gardner, who's also going to be sharing information with us as well about what's going on at his school and what their plans are. And kicking things off today, we have MASSP's own Bob Kefgen, and poor Bob, it's just never ending a stream of new information that comes out, and you're constant just updating your slides and kind of, not just updating slides because, as this epidemic order came out, it was kind of like immediately not just kind of cut and pasting what's been said, but also what's the interpretation that's going to be most important for secondary school principals. And probably one of the items that we got the most kind of blowback on was about testing. It wasn't as much about, the gathering limits and things of that nature, but many of you noted that the College Board only requires 3 feet of distance between test takers, whereas the epidemic order indicated that it needed to be 6 foot. And Bob and I were quick to point out to everyone, hey, people, it actually got better because the original was 12 foot. And we pushed back and said, there's no way people can do 12 feet. So we managed to get the governor's office to agree to put that down to 6 foot. And that's where we landed on that item, which isn't exactly directly related to year-end activities. But I did want to put that out there as Bob is going to get started. Anything that you want to add to that? Just
real quickly on the testing piece, 2 things to clarify. One, MSTEP is not a nationally administered test. No spacing requirements for MSTEP. It's just the nationally administered stuff. So the other question is, because Michigan uses PSAT, SAT, work keys as state assessments, do they fall under the rules for national administration? Those rules were originally written back a couple of months ago, or maybe even in the fall, to allow for offsite administration of SAT, PSAT. They've been revised a little bit. They're down to 6 feet now because we squawked about 12. But I'm making the case to DHHS and the governor's office that these are state assessments, not nationally administered, and seeing if we can slip them in under the same rules as MSTEP with no minimum spacing other than what College Board or whomever requires. Give you guys the choice how you want to set it up. No word on that yet. but we have done the outreach. So stay tuned. We're doing what we can.
And believe me, we understand that your students, for the most part, many of you who are back in the building are at a much less than 6 foot spacing on a regular basis. So I get that it doesn't make sense to you. Don't shoot the messenger. The messenger is working on trying to fix that problem for you. We hear you. We understand that that's an issue. So remember today, most of our leader to leaders end up just being an hour, and all of our presenters are going to try to adjust their time today, but we did advertise this one that it's probably going to go over an hour because Bob has quite a bit of information to share, and we have awesome presenters that are going to share with you kind of what their plans are, what they did last year, what they're thinking about doing this year under the new guidelines. So you're going to get a lot of great information, and I think it'll be worth your investment of time this afternoon. So here we go, Bob.
So kicking it off, just a quick disclaimer to say that I'm telling you is right, at least as far as I know, as of right this second. But I just did this presentation last Wednesday or Thursday and basically had to chuck the entire slide presentation and redo it after the order came out. So by next Tuesday, I could be wrong again. We're doing our best here, but we'll do what we can. You guys, of course, as we always do, we'll make sure you're updated with anything via email. But I think that what I'm going to share today is going to be pretty good information for you guys as you plan forward into the spring. So what we're talking about here is, what we're talking about here is the latest epidemic order. My apologies that I updated everything except the date on this slide. This is a March 2nd epidemic order. I even updated the screenshots. Like I grabbed new screenshots for this slide, but it's a March 2nd epidemic order. And what you want to look at when you're looking at that order is subsection 3, because we're talking about end of year events. And for end of year events, those sorts of things fall into the rules for entertainment facilities, recreational facilities, and food service establishments. That's the realm that we fall into here. There isn't a separate set of rules for school entertainment events or school gatherings that aren't classroom gatherings. So it's the same rules that you'd fall into if you were doing a wedding or hosting an event like that. So let's go through what those look like. When you're considering this, for every event you're considering, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. Where are you hosting your gathering? What type of gathering are you hosting? And will you be serving food? If you can answer those 3 questions, then you can parse the rules around what you need to be doing for that gathering. But those are the 3 things you need to pay attention to, and you'll see why as we go through here. So let me start with the where. The where determines your venue limits. Your venue, the where you're hosting, is going to determine how many people you can have. So we've got 2 different limits with venues. There's venue density and venue capacity. Venue density speaks to, and these both apply. It's not an either or, it's a both and. So for venue density, you can't have more than 50% of the limit set by the fire marshal for the particular venue. So that's your top end limit, regardless of the venue. So you could have an arena that seats 10,000 or 50,000. You could have, a small theater that seats 100. You're still limited at 50% maximum occupancy. In addition to that, you have capacity, and those capacity limits vary. So even if you have an arena that seats 50,000, you can't put 25,000 people in there. You have a maximum number based on what sort of venue it is. So for an indoor stadium or arena with a seating capacity of less than 10,000 people, the most people you can pack in there is 375. For more than 10,000 people, you can go up to 750 people. And that's indoor stadiums and arenas. For an indoor entertainment or recreation facility, banquet hall, auditorium, theater, you're talking a max of 300 patrons. And for an outdoor entertainment or recreation facility, you get up to 1,000. So if this is complicated, figuring out your maximum capacity, I agree, right? Because you've not only got to keep track of both your venue like fire marshal capacity, you also have to figure out where you fall in terms of the maximums. But because it varies by venue, it does allow you, depending on what kind of event you're trying to get put together, to pick and choose your venue to maximize your ability to hold whatever event it is you want to hold. So again, within that epidemic order, I want to talk about what is considered an entertainment and recreational facility, because we've got this idea of stadiums and arenas, but then you've also got entertainment and recreation facilities that have a different limit. And you've got to be asking yourself, okay, wait, why can I have 375 people in my medium-sized gym, but only 300 people in my auditorium? It's stadiums and arenas. I don't know why they set separate limits, but let's talk about specifically what is an entertainment and recreation facility. And they give us a definition. So auditoriums, arenas, cinemas, concert halls, performance venues, sporting venues, stadiums, theaters, nightclubs, strip clubs, water parks, archery ranges, amusement parks, arcades, bingo halls, bowling centers, on and on. I hope nobody has a trampoline park in their school, but maybe if you do, you're considered an entertainment and recreational facility. Now you'll notice on my list here that I've got stadiums and arenas. The rules for entertainment and recreational facility apply unless superseded by the rules for something else. So it's 300 people unless you're a stadium or arena, in which case it goes up a little bit, right? So if you're on the list, it's 300 unless you get a separate set of rules for yourself. So that's capacity. That's the where question. Where am I holding that event? How many people can I have? That's how you figure out the where. The next question is what kind of event? Because the thing you have to ask yourself is, what kind of gathering am I having? Or am I trying to hold commencement or a senior honors dinner or prom, or what am I trying to do? Because now we have to get into the specific gathering rules. Regardless of what you're doing, masks worn at all times except when eating, groups are spaced 6 feet apart. But we get into a difference between what is a group. If it's an indoor event, a group can mean up to 25 people from any number of households. So you could have any group of 25 people you want. Before it was just 10 people from 2 households, you had to worry about households. Now it's 25 people from any number of households. So think about this, if you're trying to do an indoor graduation, you can group up to 25 people together in a cluster. So, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, aunt, uncle all can sit together. If you go outdoors, this is a totally different thing. Groups outdoors are considered up to 300 people from any number of households. Why does this matter? Well, not only do the venue limits apply, but when we're talking about groups, there are prohibitions against mingling between groups. So people, let's say we're indoors and you've got a group of 25 and another group of 25. Those 2 groups have to stay 6 feet apart at all times, and the members of those groups can't commingle. But if you're outdoors, you've got a group that is 300 people. There are no mingling restrictions there. You still got to mask up, but there's no need to try and police if people are moving out of this cluster at 25 and into this other cluster at 25. This will get, I'm going to highlight specific examples of what this would look like a little bit later, but start thinking prom. Some other nuances here. Venues that cannot adhere to masking and distancing may not be open. So the examples they give in the epidemic order are water parks, nightclub dance floors. They give a couple of others. Now, nightclub dance floors may give you pause, but I think the rules about mingling will play themselves out as we move forward. As I mentioned, no mingling or physical contact between those groups. For your bands and your choirs and any other groups that are going to perform, say at graduation, they just follow the standard safety rules you have in your buildings, right? They got a mask, but they can wear the slitted masks. They can do the bell covers on the big instruments. Bands and choirs, just do what you're doing in your classrooms. You're fine. There are additional rules if you're serving food, though. So senior honors dinner or athletics banquet, something like that. Now we're talking food service. So food consumption is allowed only when patrons are seated. No wandering appetizer affairs. You got to be seated at a table to eat. Food service establishments, you have to have no more than 6 people to a table, and you have to space those tables at least 6 feet apart. And you have to display an MDHHS brochure, but print that sucker out, slap it on a wall. That's the easiest of these requirements to deal with. When their people are seated at their table, they're 6-person little pods. You can't have mingling between those groups or gathering in common areas. The examples they give are dance floors or social spaces. You can't have mingling. If you're indoors, you've got additional dining restrictions, capacity limits, patron limits. You got to be closed from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. And again, you got to display that brochure. So let's take 2 examples. First one I'm going to do is commencement. So let's think about how these things play out if we're doing commencement. With commencement, you can have a max number of attendees up to 50% of your capacity, or if you're doing it in the auditorium, you can pack in 300 people. A gym with less than 10,000 seats, 375. A gym with greater than 10,000 seats, 750. Or you put that sucker out on the football field and you can have 1,000 people there. So I think we're going to see a lot of football field graduations this year to get those numbers up. Your groups, if you're indoors, 25 people. Outdoors, you can go up to 300. I would suggest you don't want to have to, especially if you're going to try and seat 1,000 people at an event. I wouldn't want to have to keep track of 2 groups of 300 or 3 groups of 300. Probably better to just try and limit your groups to 25. You can't have mingling or physical contact between those groups, so get people into their seats, get them seated, make sure they're distanced at least 6 feet apart, and masking is required. So, commencement. Looks like we might have some graduations this year. Example 2, indoor proms. So I'm going to start with indoor proms. With indoor proms, there's a limit on 300 people. There's a limit of 300 people within any distinct space within a venue. So in theory, if you could have lots of mini proms. You could spread it out throughout your building, and each room could have up to 300 people with groups of only 25 from any number of households. But there's no mingling or contact, and I've never met a prom that doesn't involve mingling or contact. Lots and lots of contact. Your groups must maintain that 6-foot distancing, and masking is required. In other words, I don't know how you're gonna manage a prom indoors this year. Maybe you come up with something creative, but I just don't see prom indoors as a viable option. But prom outdoors is a different story. You can have up to 1,000 people outdoors, remember, but you're not gonna be able to really do much with 1,000 people because your group size outdoors is 300 from any number of households. So I would say, practically speaking, you're probably talking about an upward limit of 300 people at prom. There's no physical contact between groups, but contact within groups is totally cool. And so as long as you have under 300 people, you call everybody a group and they can all mingle and interact. Masking is required. When we're talking 300 people, that's 300 total, not just 300 kids. You got 300 people, that's got to include any staff you've got there, chaperones, whatever else. Add up, count to 300, that's how many people you can have. So maybe you're having, I don't know how you're going to manage it, but I at least see a vehicle for prom outdoors. And clearly so does AMPA events, because when I searched outdoor prom, they threw that at me. Outdoor seating enclosures, I'm not going to walk through this, but I do want you to know it's out there as a resource. It's on the MDHHS website, and it is the rules for seating in a tent. And so take a look at this if you're going to be having seating outdoors at an event like this, because it talks about how you have to space tables for seating. Again, it's up on the MDHHS website. You'll also get these slides. Things not covered by this order. The first one is extracurricular activity. And I mention this because there is an explicit carve out in the epidemic order for extracurricular activities. You can have extracurricular activities without regard to some of these limits. So prior to this order, I would think that some folks might have taken a look at just calling their end of year celebration an extracurricular activity. Given the changes in this order, I think you might want to hesitate on that one and see if you can do what you're trying to do within the rules outlined here. because these limits will allow certain versions of end-of-year activities, as we've talked about. I think if I were a district, I would say the safer bet is to work within what I have rather than trying to run around it. We also don't know what further changes districts might expect, right? As of last Thursday, I thought I knew the rules on this, and then Tuesday happened and I didn't know any of the rules anymore. So we could see further evolutions of this. We also don't know what other supports might be provided to schools to support student gatherings. For example, we saw rapid testing come through as a vehicle for athletics. That allowed athletics to move forward. Could we see something similar or another type of support like that as another option schools could pursue if they want to go after these end-of-year activities that could give them some more options? So I saw we had some questions pop up in the Q&A. Wendy, can I field some of those? Are there particular ones you want to throw?
Yes, sorry, I was having a hard time grabbing those. Can you explain the difference between the 300 people for an outdoor prom versus 1,000 for graduation?
Yes. So it's about groups versus gathering limits. So I'm going to go back a couple of slides here. I hope I don't make you sick just jumping around, but here's capacity limits. This is the total number of people you're allowed to have together at any one time in a place. And for an outdoor entertainment and recreation facility like a football field, you can have up to 1,000 people there at a time. But for prom, we're talking about groups intermingling. We're talking about kids dancing together, et cetera. Otherwise, it's not prom. I mean, I guess you could have a socially distanced, everybody sit in your own corners kind of prom. I mean, that's what I was like at prom, but I don't think that counts. So for mingling, you've got an outdoor group size of 300 max that you don't have to worry about mingling and people touching each other. So that's why I'd say the upper limit on a prom type event is probably 300, even though you could feasibly have 1,000 people at your venue. Now, I guess you could be running 3 simultaneous proms in different parts of your facilities and different parking lots or whatever, and you got prom A, prom B, and prom C, and you can call them all at the same time, say, look, we got 900 people here and we're good to go, but you just can't move from prom A to prom B. Sure, I guess. I mean, that would be an option too.
All right, Bob, so let me just make sure, if I were to have an outdoor prom and
Yep.
I have 300 or fewer people, they can be dancing
Yes.
like they normally do. Okay.
Or you can have 250 people and 50 nuns to keep them from dancing, but yes.
Hey, that didn't stop me. All right.
Leave
So,
space for Jesus.
And if we're talking about food, can I also have food at that event?
Yes, you may, but again, you're going to have to deal with food service rules. So you can't have walking food, can't have people grabbing food and going and walking around. You got to be seated to eat. What I would probably do is set aside an area of tables, make it a designated area. You then follow the rules like I would for a food service establishment. Get your food, sit at a table, no more than 6 people at a table, tables no more than 6 feet apart. Once you sit down at that table, you can't get up and move to a new table because there's no mingling between groups or gathering in common areas. How this exactly plays with a prom, I don't think anybody anticipated. These rules were written for restaurants, not for high school prom. I think I could see a way forward to do it, but I'd have to think it through exactly how to make that happen.
All right. So just off the top of my head, I'm thinking if we had a venue where there was a banquet facility indoors, kids go in there, eat 6 at a table, sitting down, and then they finish their food. They go outside to the outdoor facility where if there's 300 or fewer, we could be dancing.
Yeah, that's how I'd read it.
Okay. All right. Sweet. I think that I think that addresses all the questions that we had then.
And so, Jason, to your question about where in the order it addresses expectations for food, sub 3. Everything I've just described is in sub 3. The clip I took is the capacity limits. The food service piece is also in sub 3, just a little bit further down.
Okay, I'm just going through, there were some more questions that popped up. Could we have inside event with 300 seated with 6 feet tables, 6 people each with dining, then move outdoors, which is exactly what I just said, Scott. So I think we are good on that one. Another scenario David Holmes has, indoor prom, 1 gym, sectioned off for the groups. Clear expectations of not crossing the groups. Students then do not comply with the clear expectations. What are the consequences for the organizer?
I'd have to look. I believe it's a misdemeanor for violating the order. I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to take that chance.
Ryan from Fraser asks, will they, I think he meant, will these restrictions continue to, or will these loosen up, and how do we plan for it?
Very possibly they'll loosen. That's the trend we've seen, is as numbers continue to drop, we've seen things move in a particular direction. I guess what I would suggest is we've seen certain things move consistently. So masking and spacing are consistent, right? We can vary group size, but we always have masking and spacing. We always have 2 limits, a limit based on venue fire marshal capacity, and then a maximum total number of people. Again, these seem to be the variables that they change. So I would expect that those numbers could increase. In other words, you could have a higher percentage of venue capacity or a larger number of people. And then, those are the consistencies. And we also consistently seem to be moving toward less restriction. So how do you plan for it? I think maybe, like, let's say I do a prom and I plan for 300 and leave a contingency that if I'm allowed to have more, I figure out what I'm going to do with the extra people. Or I'm going to have a graduation and everybody gets 2 tickets, but if I get more people, I'll give them a 3rd ticket or something like that. That's the best I can give you for now as to how to play that out.
Right. Okay. So I don't really know, someone suggested, like, could we require that students have a COVID test and bring a negative result with them to enter?
Potentially, sure. I also think there's potential for maybe rapid testing. I've heard that idea thrown out as a potential resource that districts could use, as rapid testing and negative result required to enter prom. I don't know if that's going to come to reality, but I think that's a conversation that folks are going to have.
Okay, just to reiterate, you already answered this one, but when the number is 300, that doesn't mean 300 kids and then an additional 25 chaperones. 300 is the total sum. So it's 300 or fewer individuals.
300 or fewer people.
Yeah.
Yep. And when we're talking 1,000 people in a stadium, that's everybody. So let's say it's a sporting event that includes the players, that includes the coaches, that includes whoever else. 1,000 means 1,000. At 1,001, you're turning that person away.
All right, fantastic. Well, Bob, I'm going to just have you monitor the Q&A, and you can type in answers, just because I want to get on with the ideas that we've got from our panelists, which are fantastic. I also noticed a couple of people posted questions in the chat. Bob, if you want to answer those.
I will work on that while other people are sharing better ideas.
All right, fantastic. Well, with us to help solve some of the problems, or at least give you some inspiration and ideas, we've got a great panel. So we are going to kick things off with Jennifer Bustard from Mona Shores. And, Jen, you've done a fantastic job. One of the things that we were talking about is, geez, our kids in the class of 2021 actually going to feel like they got gypped because the kids of 2020 got so much done for them last year. So it's going to be interesting to see, kind of fully virtual last year, all the creative things that we came up with, to this year, kind of maybe almost like a hybrid of back to normal, what this is going to look like. So thanks so much, Jen, for your willingness to share, because you had so many really wonderful things happen at Mona Shores last year.
We just had so much fun, and it's hard to believe we're coming up on a year, the anniversary of going remote back in March. So when I think about the class of 2020 and the shock factor that it had for everyone, it hit home because I actually had twins who were the class of 2020. So I really knew how they were feeling and how their friends were feeling, that we had to make sure that we were committed to in-person celebration. So I think the kids wore their cap and gown more times in the history of Mona Shore's graduates, and we had so much fun. So the first thing I'd like to share with you is that at the end of our school year, we always have our traditional Sailor Pride all-school assembly where we give away a car and a moped and all of our PBIS awards. And we were really adamant that we were going to do it. And that was when things were very uncertain. So we did a virtual assembly. We brought the car in and we had all the finalists on the Zoom, and they were all anxiously waiting to see who won the car. And I tell you what, we had our entire community, K-12, all watching this assembly because it was the only thing that people got to do that was somewhat normal at that point. So this year, we're super excited. We're going to launch May 21st. Originally, we thought we could only get our seniors in the Sailor Center, but now that the limits are up, we're going to actually have the assembly outdoors at the football field and have all of our students in the bleachers. Our football field stadium holds about 5,300 people, so we can get all of our students outside. We're so excited about that, to have the whole school together, and we will have an end of the year celebration. So those things are in the works. We just started planning that yesterday. So let's take a step back and think about the class of 2020. So Ryan, if you wouldn't mind clicking on that link for me. So this is where we landed last year, and very helpful information that we got from MASSP and planning. We actually held a senior celebration week the end of July, and on Monday we had what was called a senior gala, and we rented this huge tent and we put it on the Sailor stadium entrance, and we had 100 kids sign up via Google form at a time. They got to wear the dresses that they already bought. We had tables set up 6 feet apart. We had music playing. We had packaged ice cream and cookies, and we had some backdrops for the kids to take photos with. And then the next 100 came. So it was just a wonderful event, and they were so excited. They got a chance to have dinner with their friends. The next day we had honors convocation on our soccer field. We had rented huge jumbo screens, and we actually were able to have each of our seniors have 2 tickets, which the health department approved at the time. And the next day was graduation, and we had a senior breakfast for the students where we had packaged goods from our food service. And then we actually went through rehearsal, and we had a beautiful day, and we had a graduation where we turned in a full, everyone was there, 280 graduates. We were allowed to have 4 tickets per graduate, which met the criterion. The health department was wonderful and approved all of this, and it really worked out great. So Ryan, if we can go back to the pictures, that would be great. And so in the slide, you'll see that we had the graduates on the football field, and we had a flyover in their honor, and the kids were actually 10 feet. They were great. They had senior songs, senior speeches, and we so look forward to this. And what was very popular in our state was the car parades. We actually did graduation car parade on the date we were supposed to graduate, which was in May. And so that was where we gave our diplomas as well. So you can see some of those photos. So we're excited. We believe that we can pull off an outdoor prom again on the football field. We have beautiful bathrooms, and we're going to a little bit have some magic underneath the big top. And Wendy, I didn't know we could do dancing. I'm not sure what I think about that. So I'm not sure I'm going to spread that word too much with the kids, or maybe the scoop will get out anyways. The other thing that we plan to do is we're going to have our honors convocation indoors in our auditorium with a new order. We can certainly do that safely. If something changes, we know how to run it outdoors, and we will do so. Then finally, we really, back in June and July, we're able to have band banquets and orchestra banquets and choir banquets. They just did it outside, and they did it in a drive-up fashion, and it was really well received. So with the new orders, we'll look at it a whole lot differently this spring. Thinking about our retirements, you can see a beautiful picture of Judy there in the center. She and her husband were so shocked when 200 cars went flying by of students and staff and parents to congratulate her. The staff loved that. I think we're going to be doing it again this spring. We have one retiree and we'll be honoring him the same way. And then thinking about some banquets, when the orders were tighter, we had Brady Rhodes, who was the football player of the year. And when he was honored, we actually had him in the Sailor Center and he was live streamed. And then all of his teammates were on a Google Meet, and you can see that projector screen, and they were all shocked and excited. And that was a great day for him. So we really plan to do a lot of in-person and live streaming, and it's just been a blast to start to think about what more we can do now.
Awesome, Jen. I didn't see if we had any. Oh, I see Sheila Fillmore is asking you, Jen, where did Jennifer get her jumbo screens? They're looking for something like that.
Yeah, so we used ProLogic, and those suckers came in on a truck, and we had 2 of them, and they were fun because when the kids were singing, you could see them. And actually the jumbo screens, you could see the kids getting their diploma way better than you would when you're in an indoor venue. So it was pretty cool. Yeah, those cost a pretty penny though. They're not cheap. Sure. They're not cheap.
Yeah. All right. If anyone else has a question for Jen, feel free, or any of our other panelists for that matter, feel free to pop that in the Q&A. They will be keeping an eye out for that. So let's stay in West Michigan. We just went from Mona Shores, and we'll move along the side of the water over there to Katie Pennington at Holland High School. And I troll Katie on social media in the Holland School District because they really did some creative things with their commencement. So I tracked her down and asked her to participate today.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Wendy. And I'll be honest, after Bob's kind of opened the can of worms on some of the gathering limits, I have been super excited texting my team about planning a prom that I think our kids can, like, they're calling right now. They're so excited. We are just thrilled to be able to have something to offer to kids. I'm here today, though, to talk about some of the cool things we did last year. And I know a lot more right now than I did even the last time I gave this little mini presentation, because the order has changed. So I think we're going to be able to tweak what we did last year, which was very cool, to the new order. We did an event outdoors. I'm kind of scrolling through just quickly. I will share the link to these slides with you. This is the graduation rehearsal. It was a Zoom meeting, but this is the Google slide presentation I shared with parents and students that kind of went over what was expected at graduation. And think back to last year. We had no in-person contact for months. So we wanted to make sure people really knew what was expected of them, didn't have unnecessary anxiety because it is such a different environment for a commencement, and that we set ourselves up for success. So I would say we had really 2 events to highlight. Both happened on the same day, and they were related to each other. So we have the senior packet pickup. On the next slide, I can explain that in more detail. And then commencement itself was at Holland Civic Center, not in the building, in the parking lot. So this is this picture with the yellow flowers. If you can look closely, there's a ramp that kind of leads up from the left to the right. That was our graduation stage. So we are fortunate that we had a place in Holland that was available and willing to accommodate this need. So the commencement packet pickup, how did we get all of the things that seniors would need to graduate in their hands? We had a separate event that was really just as big with just as much fanfare in front of our high school. Since we were limited to the number of people who could attend commencement, I will tell you that commencement packet pickup became as big an event. So this is where our teachers kind of lined the streets and said goodbye to the kids. These bulleted items are all of the things that the kids picked up when they drove through in their cars. Things like cords, medals, and certificates, those are things that would typically have been handed out in Holland at a separate honors convocation. We couldn't have that this year, so we just made sure that every student who wanted to attend commencement had all of the bling that they needed to wear with their caps and gowns. How did we keep people and only the people for commencement in the parking lot? We gave them a windshield placard that was very specific with their family's last name on it, so it couldn't be photocopied. And we did some things that we hoped made things fun. We gave them some snacks for the ceremony with in little bags that had Holland stickers on them, cookies, popcorn, bottles of water, and then each graduate received a fleece blanket with a Power H on it. How did we confirm that everyone completed graduation rehearsal? You know, in pre-COVID times, we literally checked their name off a list. We couldn't do that last year. So we had a Google form that was really 2 questions. I can click on it so you can see what it looked like. But we really wanted to make sure that people understood the importance of following the rules. In English and Spanish, we asked people to really just acknowledge receipt of those 2 questions, that they had completed the graduation rehearsal video and they agreed to comply with social distancing guidelines. If they arrived to that commencement packet pickup and we didn't have confirmation they'd completed this, we handed them a paper copy, they pulled off to the side, and then they checked those boxes. So no one got into the actual ceremony without having done those couple of things. We gave them very detailed maps of the facility, the entrances. We tried to graduate walking up ramp. We invited them to visit the Civic Center parking lot beforehand. It's a public lot, so acquaint themselves with it. We did have a professional photographer there to take their pictures. And again, we did our best to kind of show them what this would look like. I recall, thinking about it now, that we also had someone in the Zoom meeting kind of live on the scene at the Civic Center. And we went on location to him and he walked up the ramp and showed us what it would look like from the student perspective. For people who could not attend because we were limited on, you know, number of family members and number of cars, we had several radio broadcasts in English and Spanish. We also live streamed the ceremony for people who were either in Holland or elsewhere and just accessing it via the web. We included honors and awards that we would have normally given out at Honors Convocation in the announcement as students cross the stage. So instead of just saying Wendy's a Deb, we would say Wendy's a Deb, you know, 4.0 honors cord, and give kind of the, yeah, there you go, Wendy. We would announce those things. Honestly, those are some of the things I think we might consider keeping around after COVID. Lots of social distancing reminders. And then we started to think about what would people ask after listening to that. So we kind of guessed on what some of the questions might be. Yes, you need to stay for the whole ceremony. I will say, even with all of this planning and all of these details, I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I was a nervous wreck that day. And at 3 p.m. the day of the event, Governor Whitmer had an updated order. And my only thought was, oh my goodness, all of this planning, and we're going to be more restrictive than we need to be. It ended up okay. So this is just kind of a gallery of photos because I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. There were some really emotional moments this night. I think, you know, over the past year, we've all had a lot of those moments. There's the stage. There's one of the big screens, kind of like Jen had at Mona Shores. We had 3 of those in the parking lot so people could see them. Blue Water Group was the company that we went through to get those if you're interested. They are expensive, but they're well worth it. And as cars pulled in, our marketing director did some fun things, you know, honk your horn if you're a graduate, you know, and he would have kind of cutesy little participation games to play. We loosened things up and let kids do what they wanted with their graduation gowns and mortar boards. I think that is something that's worth maybe considering keeping around. The professional photographer piece, we had students with the approval of the health department able to take their masks off for this moment. So this student right here is getting his professional photograph taken. They turned out gorgeous. Yeah, just it was an absolutely wonderful night. And if I can scroll back to the first set of pictures. Downtown Holland Civic Center parking lot is surrounded by some parking ramps. And I remember kind of standing on the stage and just hearing kind of ambient noise that was far away. And our teachers, I mentioned, they were not allowed to attend because of the gathering limits at that time. We had our teachers lined up along the roof of this parking ramp cheering on our kids. And I mean, you want to try not to cry in front of 1,000 people or so. That was a tough one, because when I realized that's what they were doing, it took my breath away. So this is a Smug Mug photo gallery. It's accessible to you on our website if you'd like to go there and scroll through all of them. But thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Awesome, Katie. Very cool. And if you want to drop that link into the chat, that would be great.
No problem.
All right, so we're going to stay on the west side of the state, and we are going to go to Jamie and Gardner from Kalamazoo Central. And once again, another school that I troll on social media. I know that the Giants don't do anything small. So go ahead and tell us what you did.
Thank you, Wendy. That was a great play on words as well. I appreciate that. Once again, I just thank you all for this opportunity to be able to share. It's great to hear that there are so many like-minded folks in the world of education looking for ways and opportunities not to cheat students, and kind of make these events that we're so accustomed to and in some respects take for granted, make them as special as possible, especially with the year year that we've had. So my name is Jamie Gardner, and I serve as an assistant principal here at Kalamazoo Central High School here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I get the honor to step in for Mrs. Bogan, Mrs. Valerie Bogan, who is our building principal and was not able to be here with you all today. And so I'm just going to go through a slideshow that she had created that just touches a little bit on some of the things that we worked to do both last year for our class of 2020, I'm sorry. And then also some things will be mixed in. I think everybody was able to learn some things from last year and present some different opportunities and ways in which we can do it better for this year. And as Bob already shared with us, which I appreciate him making that so dummy proof, for all of us, we got some more work to do and going back to the drawing board to really do it up for our seniors for the class of 2021. So one of the things that was important to us here at Kalamazoo Central is that we gave our class of 2020 a lot of things that they had been used to seeing, and not just the class, but also their families and our community as well. And so obviously we typically would hold our commencement at our Wings venue here in Kalamazoo. Being that we weren't able to do that, we did host, like most other schools, a outside version of our commencement, which was scaled back a little bit just due to some of those restrictions. But that commencement was recorded and live streamed for families, which I thought presented a great opportunity, not just for families here in the Kalamazoo community, which would only be able to attend the commencement, but if you had family in California, they will be able to also see the commencement. One of the things that we've always done is our senior award ceremony, and that's just an opportunity for that senior class to really vote for awards. And I think back to my high school time, which was just a couple years ago. You had the best smile, you had the most athletic. So we wanted to continue those traditions along with our senior courting ceremony, which really recognizes our students who achieved academically well throughout their high school careers. So both of those in years previous had been in person, where we would invite community members as well as families to come in for the senior awards. It was also an opportunity for individuals within the community who had donated scholarships for students, for them to actually present those awards to students in a manner which was live. We pre-recorded all of those. It had messages from community members, from families, and from the seniors themselves for that award ceremony. Our courting ceremony was done similar to that, where our administrative team, as well as some of our non-instructional staff, created videos so that they could still, in the comfort of their own homes with their families, still have some semblance of what courting meant and really try to uphold the prestigiousness of how you finish your high school career. Life Changers letters, we refer to our students as world changers here at Kalamazoo Central, because that's what we feel that we're preparing them to be able to do. Conversely, we take a look at our staff and we call them life changers. So this presented an opportunity for our world changers or students to continue the tradition of touching base with or writing an impactful letter to those instructional staff members here within the building that really made an impact on them. And so we know that not only were students suffering from the pandemic and having to learn virtually, but also our staff was struggling as well. So this was kind of our effort, if you will, to kind of merge those two things and give everybody a feel-good moment as well. Moving on to our senior picture day in the building is something that we want to do this year. Obviously, as times have changed since many of us have been in high school, the invention and the popularity of the selfie or USSI or TikTok or whatever the case may be has grown dramatically, that individuals and students love to capture those moments in a way that they can remember forever. And so one of the things that was really on Ms. Bogan's heart was to present an opportunity for students to come into the building and still go to their favorite hallway or their favorite corner or a special place in the building with their group of friends, for them to be able to take a picture, to do a TikTok, just create another moment for them to really be able to remember their senior year, with it being such a momentous occasion in the lives of individuals. Number 6 is our senior blurbs, and what that actually is. And Ryan, I'm not sure if you want to start going through some of those pictures. I can stop you when I need you to. If you could stop right there with Ms. Hawkins Spiller. This is an example of what we would call our senior blurbs. As you've seen a couple slides before, we utilize our newsletter and we call that giant prints. As Wendy said, we don't do anything small here at Kalamazoo Central. And so with our senior blurbs, this was an opportunity once again to highlight seniors and as they were transitioning to their next stage of life. And so what we did was ask families and students to present some picture and a little bit of a bio or a write-up about things that they had accomplished, things that were important to them about their high school journey, who that most influential person was to them, for them really to be able to, or for us to be able to put them on display. And so this was just an example that we actually shared with all of our stakeholders for individuals to kind of help continue that celebration for our seniors. Moving on to what I believe is number 8 on our list is our cap and gown and yard sign distribution. And this was, I don't know what number on the slide that one is, Ryan, but you're going to see some cars lined up. There you go. And so this was just kind of a picture of what our drive-through event looked like for our cap and gown distribution, as well as yard signs. Typically, we haven't done yard signs for our students, but once again, it presented us with a different opportunity for families and students to feel special as their loved one was getting ready to complete their matriculation through high school. And so I think I heard Ms. Pennington say that we learned some things that we're going to keep. And I think our yard signs are one thing that we're definitely going to be able to keep. It was great to be able to drive through the community in different neighborhoods and be able to point out that, hey, so-and-so is a graduate there. So it was just a great opportunity for us. Number 9 is our influential educators. And so this was another opportunity like our life changer letters, where we just didn't cap it at instructional staff. And Ryan, you can go ahead and leave it there, that's fine. We didn't cap it at just our instructional staff, but we really encouraged our seniors to take anybody within the community and write a letter to, or send us some encouraging words. So we really looked at mentors, people within the community that supported them. It could have been a family member, it could have been an instructional staff member, it could have been somebody from our janitorial services or our food service, but really wanted to, once again, continue to allow them to spread love to the individuals that had really impacted their high school journey. As you take a look at our drive-by, once again, as I just heard what Ms. Pennington was saying, and I think Ms. Bustard as well, one of the things that we wanted to do was also create an opportunity for our staff members to be able to celebrate our students too. And so what we did, kind of in a combination with what we're calling Leave the Lights On. And Ryan, if you want to go back to that first slide, just so you can see the list, that would be great. What we did is just allow students and their families to come in through. We had a specific route marked off for them, and we had our staff members lined up. Staff members had made signs. They brought their lawn chairs out, obviously socially distanced, and just allowed students to hear, encouraging words from our staff, and just for them to be celebrated in that way. Typically, what we've done is a senior clap out, where we allow our entire senior class to walk through the building. All of our classes come out in the hallway, and we kind of clap them out as they are en route to their senior breakfast. And so obviously we couldn't do some of those things as we had. So we tried to create as much of a similar atmosphere for students and families as we could. And that drive-by was a piece of that, along with Leave the Lights On. So one of the cool things, sometimes you get that beautiful sky where the sun is setting and it's all different colors. And so one of the things that we did was actually during that drive-by, kind of the culmination of that was a 20-minute, 20-second opportunity for seniors to get out of their cars, take pictures with one another. We left our stadium lights on, and it just was right at dusk. So it created a really good moment for seniors and families to be able to enjoy kind of what was that clap out, just in a different way. We also work with our staff to do video message and still photos to students. So we charged our staff with recording a 10 to 15 second video clip or taking a picture to really send the students to let them know how they were missed during that third trimester. Some of the things that we're currently doing is working to hold a senior parent meetings. And so we've already conducted one just where we're able to keep communication in front of parents to tell them what events they need to be on the lookout for, and then also get some understanding or what they want for their senior year, for their senior and their families as well. And so we're not just doing that with our seniors, we're also doing that for our 9th, 10th, and 11th graders as well. And then we're looking to put on the schedule for this year, because much like our seniors for 2021 are getting arrived, if you will, our freshman class didn't get a chance to have an in-building orientation and a lot of the things that we've typically done to acclimate them to our culture before they come in the building. And so those are some things that we have planned for the tail end of this trimester, to do some virtual tours with students and families to kind of get them back, understanding and feeling that we will be back in the building in person for the fall of 2021. So those are some things that we've done here at Kalamazoo Central, and some things that we're looking to continue and then add to our plate in the midst of what we're all dealing with. So once again, thank you for your time. I will in the chat add Mrs. Bogan's email address in case anybody has some additional questions, but also I'm available to try to answer any, or however you want that process to go.
Well, fantastic. So many great things. I don't know how anybody could leave this session today without some really great ideas and an opportunity to grow what you're already doing. So let's just transition a little bit and shift gears and think about middle school. So Amy Henry is with us today from Carter Middle School, which is in Macomb County. So Amy, tell us what things that you did to make your students feel special.
All right, just like last time, I already have the entire sheet of my presentation filled out from all the ideas. I hope you use this opportunity to beg, borrow, and steal. This is what we do as MASSP members. Here is my information. I'm the principal of Carter Middle School and Warren Consolidated Schools. We are about 50-50 here for our virtual and our face-to-face, just to get you a little bit of our demographics information. And then there's my Twitter handle, because again, I have already written everybody's down today while I was watching you, and I'll stalk you later. But there's my Twitter handle if you want to beg, borrow, and steal from the middle school. All right, so we're first going to talk about at the middle school level. One of the things that we learned very quickly in the pandemic was to build our community outreach. And in Warren Consolidated Schools, we partnered with Gleaners. Gleaners is in our community every other day, all the way from the middle school or the elementary all the way up to the middle school. We're going back to the basics, or went back to the basics at the beginning of the pandemic, and just talked about survival skills and what do we do? And obviously food was the first thing that came to mind. In addition to that, we also have built a outstanding toolbox for our mental health, our social emotional students, our Chaldean Foundation within our community in Sterling Heights High School, lots and lots of resources for our community members. We update them on our website. Obviously, we did that pre-pandemic, but we're doing it more often, obviously, while we're in the pandemic. Just like Jen said earlier, I was writing so fast when Bob was talking that and Katie, maybe it was you, I'm kind of spiraling a little bit right now, because what do we keep and what do we go back is the plan for moving forward here. But again, we talked about basic survival skills in Warren Consolidated Schools. I do have to do a shout out. We hit 1 million free meals in Warren Consolidated Schools. So that is an outstanding honor for me to be a part of. And we will continue food here in Warren Consolidated Schools as we go through the pandemic. So let's talk about how middle schoolers celebrate graduating from the 8th grade. One of the things that we love to do at Carter Middle School is we love to write old-fashioned notes. Our teachers did an outstanding job of just getting back again to the basics. What did we do before we sent a text message or an email? You sat down and wrote some notes. You used a postcard. I just was talking to a student in the hallway that received a note from a teacher in the mail, and he's never received anything in the mail before because he's always got a text message and or an email. So just take it back to the basics. You have 150 students. The teacher on the left, if you look, had 153. It took her about a week. I pay for all the postage and all of the materials, the cards. They just give me the receipts and I pay for them. It's well worth it. As a middle school principal, we get a little cheesy. Yes, we write letters to our 8th graders as they go on to the ninth grade into high school. Typically, I take all of their report cards and write all of the things that I remember from them walking in the door in 6th grade. It probably takes me 3 weeks to a month to do all of my 8th graders, but I really think of everything that I can think of regarding that student and write it all on their report card and wish them luck moving into the high school. Again, we in the middle school, we like everything to be fun. I'm a huge fan of sending gift cards home. We like to do gift cards that have meaning for our community. We do McDonald's gift cards, Taco Bell, Amazon for families that need things. We typically wrap them around earned privileges in the middle school. And we also like to send out 212 cards to our students that are doing well. 212 is the degree, obviously, that water boils. And we know that when water boils, it creates steam and it moves that engine. So our students know that every time that they do something positive, they will get a 212 card. When we're face-to-face, they put the 212 cards in a box. We pull once a week. They get free ice cream in the cafeteria. Now we pull their name once a week. They get gift cards in the mail. I always have explained to my staff, whether we're virtual or face-to-face, we're not going to change. We're going to stay consistent with what we've done in the past. And everybody that has presented has shared that example. I think the kids are just going to win in the end now that we have all of these ideas, and we're never going to go back to those simple traditions that we had. In the middle school, we did have a difficult time, I'm sure, at the high school getting a yearbook together, starting to panic a little bit about what our yearbook's going to look like. So I do principal challenges once a week so I can fill up those yearbook page. I did this presentation 2 weeks ago, and this was the day before the presentation. I did the principal's pet challenge, and we sent out $10 gift cards to those individuals that participated. Hey, it took up 6 pages of my yearbook, which is outstanding. And who doesn't want to forget about that pet when they're graduating from high school and look back at middle school? A lot of us are getting trained and thinking about the social emotional factor, especially elementary, middle school, as they go from the transition to high school. Our staff spend a lot of time outside writing messages from the bus into the school, or sometimes our staff members will stop at homes in the surrounding areas just to let the students know that they care. After this presentation last week, I reached out to some of my colleagues across Warren Consolidated Schools to get some more information. So it just wasn't about Carter. And this is an example of a social emotional support room over at Grissom Middle School. And this was a grant that they received from our local credit union. But they brought the students into this social emotional room to teach them how to breathe, take a time out, relax, and get themselves back to their center. And they're talking about carrying over some of that funding to summer yoga classes, which is outstanding. And of course, I'm going to steal it from them because that's what we do in Warren Consolidated Schools and MASSP. When we returned to school early in February, I never changed what we did when we went face-to-face to virtual. And you can't really see it, but there's about a 20-pound trophy in the center of that classroom. We do virtual town hall meetings twice a week here with our parents on Wednesdays and Sundays. We did a town hall meeting with our students, and they got to choose a bunch of questions and get points. And the class that received the most points received the trophy for a week. And the trophy is big enough to hold 35 granola bars, so the students were fed for that hour. We do the trophy for just about everything. It's a staple here at Carter Middle School. We love to pass it around. Just like Kalamazoo Central, we do TikTok and photo opportunities. This was a sign that my booster club bought last year, and we will use it again this year. I noticed parents and students out by the front marquee as well. So they were posting those on our website and we were passing them around. I like what Bob said about gathering and the number with food, because last time we spoke, we were talking about the middle school principal's breakfast and how are we going to handle that this year. And I initially thought that I was going to divide 6th, 7th, and 8th grade up by days. But I think Bob says if I'm under 300, I might be okay. And the numbers with food regarding 100. So we'll think about that. But again, last year we did not do the principal's breakfast. We did send out the certificates to the students. Lots of drive-bys to drop off those certificates, hand deliver them to the students. This is Grissom Middle School staff. In Warren Consolidated Schools, we are a feeder path school. We have elementaries that follow into the same middle school and then into the high school. These are the Grissom teachers over at Sterling Heights High School, saying congratulations to their middle school students that were participating in the drive-by graduation at Sterling Heights High School. My counterpart over at Grissom also loves ice cream. So they brought in some ice cream trucks, and when they did their 8th grade farewell, typically we all do an 8th grade farewell at an arcade in our community, but we couldn't do that last year because of the shutdown. So we took the arcade outside, which is interesting because 5 years ago, we had our 8th grade celebration outside and we brought it inside. So we knew what we were doing. We just needed to know how to get there. Obviously, we have new rules this year to follow. Last 2 slides, and I know that we have some of our Warren Consolidated High School administrators on our presentation today. They did a lot of the same things that you have been doing across the board with the virtual drive-bys and things of that sort. So we did do that in Warren Consolidated Schools. And then last is my favorite. We do take an 8th grade picture every year. I apologize, I could not find the 2021 for the life of me, but this is 2019. And this is from the roof of my school with my 8th grade students. And this is my favorite activity of the year. So that's all I have, Carter Middle School. I appreciate the invitation again. And thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Amy, for providing such great ideas. And, I think obviously, a lot of the things people are sharing could be adapted just based on the setting or what the activity is. But I think you're getting some really great ideas. So we're going to head back up north to Traverse City and talk to Joe Esper, who's the principal at Traverse City West High School.
All right, I just got to share the right screen here. Okay. Maybe. There we go. Are you seeing those slides now?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, a lot of overlap with what other groups talked about. So I'll just cruise through and talk about two of these slides. But if you're not familiar, Traverse City has two Class A high schools, Traverse City Central, Traverse City West, and then we have an alternative high school. And one thing I'll just point out is, like, very much like this meeting and these principals from all different types of schools in the state collaborating and sharing ideas, both last spring and this whole school year. That's very much what it's been like for us up here. Jesse Houghton at Traverse City Central and Lance Morgan at Traverse City High, the three of us talk a ton about these events. If they come up with some great idea, like one of these ideas we're getting in the meetings, and they roll it out and don't tell us, it doesn't take long in this town for everybody else to get jealous and, you know, have their expectations about what things should happen. And regionally, we're in the Traverse Bay Area ISD, or North Ed, actually, I think it's called now. I know a few of our colleagues are on the meeting here, but we met quite regularly last spring virtually, and we've continued that right through this year. And we've been talking about prom and some of these things. Some of Bob's info on prom and this meeting was a little different than what we had been expecting. So I'm sure we'll have a different conversation next week with the regional principals. This is what our graduation for Traverse City usually looks like. So when it's not a pandemic, we go out to Interlochen Center for the Arts, and they let us use their big outdoor amphitheater. It's a 4,000, 4,500 seat amphitheater they use for summer concerts right down by Green Lake. It's awesome. Last year was the first year in the history of West Senior High School that we haven't been able to go there. So just a little comparison of things we did last year and what we're looking at this year. So last year, not being able to go to Interlochen and do a traditional graduation, we ended up doing what we call the senior walkthrough and a diploma pickup at our campus here. And we called it that because there is a very specific expectation, a pretty high expectation of what graduation and commencement looks like in Traverse City or in TCAPS. And after, you know, the shutdown last spring and all the restrictions at that point, we knew we couldn't match that expectation. So we were very clear that this was a different event, you know. So the senior walkthrough, the kids came over like a 7 or 8 hour period. We graduated about 390 seniors last year. They had staggered times, 5 minutes apart over a number of hours. They could pick their times. They could come around the same time as some friends, and they walked a path through the school. We had staff spread out in different parts of the building, so there's no congregating. It's like a 200,000 square foot building. So they were spread out through there, lots of different displays and artifacts. Our music department, as kids came through, gave them their plaques and awards, and a few other departments did that because they never had any of their final banquets and stuff last spring. And then it ended with them coming through the gym, and we read their name, and we had a big stage set up, and they got their diploma. And it was set up so they got dropped off on one side of the building, and they did this walk. Their parents drove around and met them on the other side of the building where they got their diploma. So I actually had one parent of this year's seniors who had a senior last year, and she caught me at a basketball game last week and said, "Hey, you're going to do that same thing this year, right? Because that was awesome. We were there for 15 minutes and we got our moment. No 2 or 3 hours at graduation. So it will be interesting this year." All of our award ceremonies were virtual last year. We continued that into the fall, and it's interesting to talk about things that we'll keep from the pandemic. I've already talked to my seniors this year about honors convocation, our big seniors honor ceremony, and they're all totally good with continuing to do that virtual. You know, they're busy at that point in the year. They hope to have spring concerts. They all have spring sports at that point, and they're like, yeah, the virtual thing's fine. So that may be something we continue to do in the future, even when we don't have to. Obviously, no spring sports, no prom last year. We would have done a gala if we had heard that from Mona Shores before. No sports banquets, parent meetings, that kind of stuff. So this year we're looking at kind of a continuum of graduation options. And I think with the changes in the restrictions Bob talked about, we're going to be pretty likely to do that. So we hope to take our seniors back to Interlochen where we usually do it. And just depending on what the restrictions are, it's considered an outdoor venue. We're either going to do the whole class with limited spectators or do the class in waves of 75 or 100 so they can bring a few more spectators if we need the room, but we're going to try to get back to a more normal graduation and the band and orchestra and the choir and the concert that goes with that. Like I said, we are going to continue to do the senior awards virtually though. That was a hit, so we're going to try that for one more year. Something we've done for like our 8th and 9th grade transition with the incoming freshmen. And we'll do this spring with the senior parent meetings that we always do. We've gone to more of a pre-recorded format for that. We've played with some different things of like trying to do meetings live on Zoom and stuff like that. And we've really found like in this virtual environment, it ends up being much more one way anyways. So pre-recording things versus trying to do live virtual meetings, we find like you can do multiple takes, you can merge different things together and just make a cleaner presentation. So we've gone to more of that. Same with our concerts and performances. We're in musical season right now for West Senior High, which is one of our big things. And while a few parents will be able to come in and watch it be filmed, the musical this year is all kind of like made for TV. So it's going to be done in a way that the kids aren't in huge groups on the stage. There's going to be multiple camera angles, and it will get produced more into a video type of musical that we push out. Obviously, no dances or assemblies. We were tentatively not planning on a prom dance, but after Bob's info today, we are planning to revisit that. And of course, we've done fall and winter sports pretty successfully with limited spectators. We haven't done much with banquets or signing days. We've really stayed away from those. Even team pictures for sports, we haven't allowed any of our teams, even if they're masked, to have a team photo or programs or any of that kind of stuff. We take individual photos outside of athletes or musicians or whatever, and then we put that into a composite. That's the only thing we do with pictures. So the last thing I'll share is just, from our standpoint, I know every school is a little different, but things we learned in terms of communication from March 13th last year till now, things we use a lot less in terms of our communication tools is our website. Our website is still up there, but every week we seem to peel more and more information off the website. It seems like what people need more is like information in the moment, detailed information about a specific event or what's coming up in the next week, and that static info that you might put up there for a whole year just doesn't stay current. So we've really pared that down, trying to do a lot less things with especially big decisions, communicating and in texting or words. I'll get to that in a second. We're doing less mailings, less general monthly newsletters, less of just the generalized info that goes to the whole student body or the whole school. And as I mentioned before, we've gotten more into the recording, sending out videos than doing the inviting everyone to an open Zoom or a Google Meet. We did an NHS induction this fall on Zoom, and it was great. It went well, but it was a normal Zoom. So every participant, you could see them on there, and they had to mute or unmute their mic, and nothing bad happened, but it was just a lot of family and grandparents that don't understand the technology. So they're having conversations, don't know how to mute their mic while we're trying to announce kids' names and talk about kids, and it's just people tripping over each other. So the things we have used more in the last year in terms of communication, so we really realized like we don't need to go buy these crazy tools that we keep getting marketing emails for. Just keeping it really simple has worked for us. And one thing I learned was like really try to personalize things and put the human side in it, which we've heard from some of the other principals. Like, for example, when we had to cancel prom last year, or we made a different senior walk plan instead of graduation, like those were things that I would have communicated in a video if I could go back and do it, because I think people have emotions and biases around those things, and they read it in an email and they layer some intent on there, positive or negative. Where we've done a lot more since then in just short, simple videos, and people can see you have some compassion and some empathy, and they just take the message totally differently, I feel like. So we've even gone to, during the school day, we do all our school day announcements on YouTube now, and then when parents have questions about things we've been talking about on the announcements, I just send them the link to the previous day's announcements, and they can check it out. That's worked really well. I'll show you in a second the simple way we do a lot of that. We've done more targeted emails, a lot more with social media. We had Facebook and Instagram and Twitter for the school, but we've really cranked that up with a lot of recognitions. Always senior focused. Last year and this year, a lot of senior focused recognition. So after fall sports got done, we did a senior spotlight for all our fall senior athletes. The music department and TCAPS music is a big thing at both high schools in Traverse City. The music department's going through doing senior profiles. We'll do the same thing after winter sports and all our community awards for seniors. I've learned to do a lot more things in Google Docs. So like when we do push out information about a specific event, we tend to send out a link now to a Google Doc as opposed to putting it in a body of an email, because so many things change, or you described it with this word and not this word, and the health department says, well, that might give people this impression. Being able to go back and edit things once it's been pushed out has been really important for us. And the last one I'll talk about on there is surveys. So we did a lot last spring as we had decision points about senior events of sending quick surveys to the seniors. Some events we sent seniors to their parents. And we've continued to do that this year. For things where we actually can use the input, we ask for it and we do surveys. That's helped us make good decisions. And the other thing I think it's helped with is it's helped other people accept those decisions. Because we tend to find when you talk to somebody, they assume everyone else has the same opinion as them. You know, I would get calls from parents that would say, nobody likes the senior walk idea. Like nobody does. And it's easier when you can say, well, 400 seniors responded, and actually 92% of them said of the list of options, that was the one they wanted. So that survey data can kind of help people process the changes going on. So in terms of like how we do most of our video stuff, super low tech. So most of you are Google Meet schools. I just open up a Google Meet. I share my Google Slides on Google Meet, and then I record myself. So when you get done, it emails you a copy of the recording. But when you do it that way, you'll get your slides over here on one side, and then it records a little thumbnail of you talking, and there you go. And then that's what we send out to families. I'll mention this too. I think it was Katie and talked about with their different ceremonies. They sent out some maps and some diagrams and stuff. And this was something we used a lot more of, like just getting on Google Maps and taking screenshots of different areas when we have events coming up, and then labeling those screenshots. People seem to understand it much more than, we did run into some stuff where schools were like on Word documents and using the drawing tools on Words to like, this box is the building and this box is the north parking lot. There's just a lot of confusion with that, but just using like a TechSmith capture tool on Google Maps does a ton. And then these are a few of our senior recognitions. So there you go. That's a quick snapshot from up in Traverse City. Thanks.
Awesome job. So batting cleanup from the thumb. It's Steve Carlson from Sandusky Junior Senior High School. So we have heard from a bunch of high school principals from really large buildings. And so I think it's also very helpful to kind of get a different perspective based on a junior senior high school setting as well. So thanks so much for joining us, Steve.
Hey, you bet. Man, if you've listened this long, not just to Bob giving us all the good news in the new epidemic order with the thought that maybe there's more good news to come, and you just heard 5 amazing ideas from your colleagues, and you're still listening to me. I'm not sure why you are, but thank you if you are, and I'll try not to let you down. My first thought is Wendy mentioned, we're in the thumb, we're a small rural school. I'm sure I'm the smallest school on the panel here. I don't have to worry, like a lot of you that come from similar sized schools, I don't have to worry about running these big screens for graduation. I can just use my iPhone 11 and put a slideshow up there, and most of the people that come to our events will be able to see off of that. Hey, that said, we at Sandusky, like everybody else, had to consider with everything seniors in the class of 2020 were missing, what do we want to do to make sure that they feel the love? So many things we've done this year in the pandemic have made us, sort of reinvent new opportunities. And some of those we thought, gosh, we really should have been doing this all along, and we're going to want to keep doing this. So one of the first things we did with regards to our seniors is create a senior spotlight. Super simple idea. There's zero reason why we shouldn't have thought of this before the pandemic, but we didn't, but we're going to keep it going. And what we did is we just had this background template. Our MSU CAC college advisor put these together. A lot of you have an MCAN college advisor. We have one from MSU. And we just very simply put their future plans, their family information, and their name on there. We then use this scheduling tool that Facebook provides you, And we just let every student know when their individual Facebook post was going to go out. And those of you that use your own social media accounts to help guide your school social media accounts, you know how if you have your notifications turned on, your phone just blows up sometimes. We got that 99 on our app every time we posted one of these, because so many people put comments or shared or their interactions with it. It was amazingly powerful, and we just kind of feel stupid that we didn't think of doing this before the pandemic. But this was a new thing for us, and we will continue to do this. You're going to see a lot of Larissa. Larissa is one of my favorite all-time students. She happened to be #1 alphabetically last year. Not just #1 alphabetically, but she also graduated as one of our valedictorians. And so the next thing that we had to kind of consider is, what are we going to do for our graduation? Our graduation in actually, I think all the St. Alec County schools have had a traditional graduation the weekend prior to Memorial Day, which is pretty early, but it's just one of these St. Alec County traditions, and we didn't want to mess with that. So that Sunday in May, before 2 Sundays before Memorial Day, it's always been graduation day in Sandusky, and so we needed to do something on that day. But at that point in time, we didn't have any inkling if we would ever be able to get people together. So we sought to rethink both of our elements of our commencement ceremony and elements of our senior awards night into a virtual format. This, because you always want to know, well, who did this work? Senior spotlights were done by our college advisor. This was a collaboration with my office and the counseling department's office. And we sought the information from seniors, which of course you have to do every year. The information about where they're going, what awards they achieved, what activities they belonged in, as you want to get that information out as you shine the light on them. And we created 2 slides for each senior, put it into a PowerPoint. And then that PowerPoint, as you'll see later, goes into a video. So what we did with the original slide, and this ran during our virtual graduation, during essentially what amounted to the virtual version of the presentation of diplomas. We took the senior picture that we already had for the students for the yearbook, put the student's full name underneath it, put their family information underneath it. Then over on the right, you can see these are some of the different activities and groups that this particular senior, Larissa, belonged to. And then the very next slide that you would see in the transition was a picture of the same student now in their graduation regalia with their cap and gown. Like other schools did, when we handed out caps and gowns, we weren't sure when we'd be able to see them again. So our mindset at the time was, let's give them the diploma that they've earned, and let's give them the chance to pose with the diploma in addition to the cap, gown, and all the regalia. So again, it was just simply as, this is the student, here's their parents, these are some of the things they did during their time at SHS, and then boom, here they are in their cap and gown, proudly displaying their diploma. Over to the right now, this is where we incorporated elements of our senior awards night. In a non-COVID year, we have a separate event where members of the community, members of the armed forces, members of local businesses, in addition to our staff, present a whole bunch of different awards to our graduating seniors. Without the ability to do that event last year, and rather than try to do 2 separate virtual events, we just took all the information that we had on awards and scholarships students won, and we put it into the graduation, the virtual graduation. So you can see that among other things, Larissa was the senior of the year as determined by our staff. She was valedictorian, and you can read through these other things and see what else she earned. And then at the bottom in italicized print, we indicate she's going to Michigan State University to pursue a degree in accounting. So between these 2 slides, we sought to incorporate elements of the graduation and the senior awards night. What we did from there was, in collaboration with my office and with student leaders from the class of 2020, we wanted to create a virtual ceremony that incorporated as many of the traditional elements of an SHS commencement as possible. So in the bullet points on the bottom, you see what those elements are. Those are elements of pretty much everyone's commencement. I totally understand that. But As I met with kids through a whole variety of virtual meetings, I said, how can we do a processional? How can we do a welcome? The Val and Sal speeches, of course, we wanted to get those in there. Commencement address, the presentation of diplomas. We even had cap toss pictures in there. And then, of course, the recessional. I will share the link to this slide presentation in the chat, and I believe MASSP is going to be sending all of that information to you as well. I'm not going to click on that link to the YouTube video, but if you would like to do that, it's about 30 minutes long, and you can see how we put elements together of our virtual commencement. And what's really nice is, in a typical year, we would probably get about 400 to 500 people at our indoor graduation ceremony. When I looked at the view counter on this last week for last week's presentation for the Secretary Series, we had 1,400 views. So almost triple the number of people that would normally see an SHS graduation saw this graduation. Our graduation last year would have been at 2 o'clock on the Sunday before Memorial Day weekend. So that's when we put this on Facebook. And it was really neat because some of the parents organized a car parade for the graduates, and they didn't start that car parade until about 2:30, which is when people that had logged in to watch this were able to see it. So if you have any questions about how Sandusky handled last year's events, that's my contact information. But again, you've got a lot of great ideas from a lot of other people. And then Bob kicked it all off by telling us that more may even be possible than we thought. The postscript to this is later in June, when some restrictions improved, and through the collaboration of our local health department, we did do an outdoor ceremony on our football field, whereas traditionally we would do that inside in our gymnasium. And currently, we are planning an outdoor ceremony again. Being a smaller school provides some advantages at times. And so 300 people in your group, for some of you big schools, that might be like, how are we ever going to do that? We're going to be just fine at Sandusky. If 300 would be a little bit less than we usually have to do, but we can make that work. And of course, if things get a little bit better, we start getting to like 500 people, we're going to be just fine outdoors. So again, I will put the link to this slideshow in the chat. MASSP is probably going to send it to you. And thank you for listening.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you so much. Bob has a couple of clarifying things he wanted to bring up based on your questions. And one of the things that I've heard from quite a few principals who contacted me before this webinar, and we're talking about like pressure from the community, pressure, or even that their local police department has told them we're not gonna enforce X or Y and things like that. And principals really feeling in between kind of what they know is correct by the state law and what maybe the local community wants to do. You are in between a rock and a hard place, and unfortunately I don't have a lot of advice I can give you on that, because the bottom line is you need to do what your supervisor tells you to do. But if you want to talk through that with me, please feel free to give me a call. I always share my cell phone, so I will pop that in the chat. But if you just want somebody to kind of process that with, I'd be happy to talk to you about individual situations. So Bob, go ahead and explain the clarifying things you wanted to bring up.
Clarifying thing on food. A lot of questions in the Q&A. If you didn't read the Q&A, we will try and capture that. You guys asked a ton of questions. But on food, the indoors, food for food, and then heading outdoors for dancing. Note that the indoor dining regs require no more than 100 people per distinct space within the venue. So if you're going to try and do indoor food, you got to break your kids up into groups of 100. Then when they come outdoors, they can be a group of 300 for the dancing. So again, we're trying to marry rules for outdoor gatherings with rules for restaurants, and it's not clean. But note that indoors, max patrons in any one particular space within the venue is 100. Everybody seated 6 to a table, 6 feet apart. Then when you go outside, you can have a group of 300 and they can dance. That's part one. Part two is auditoriums. It's with any distinct space. Where is it? Yeah, I'm not finding it, but for auditoriums, you can have 300 people in the audience, and then you don't have to count. You can have more people on stage. because it's 300 people within any distinct space within the venue. So I think you could argue that the stage is a separate space than the audience, especially given the physical distance between them. So you got a concert going on, you stick the band kids on the stage, you want to have 300 people in the audience. As long as you have the capacity in your auditorium to do that, I think you're probably fine. There were other things, read the Q&A, there's a ton of stuff in there.
Well, and I also mentioned to Bob, when we send the usual follow-up email, if he needs to add anything about that clarifying piece, we can put that in writing to you as well. So we hope that you benefited from today's Leader to Leader session. I did want to mention that we recently heard that, you know, during the pandemic, a number of students have, you know, transgender students have transitioned during this time. And so a lot of questions have come up about, you know, the legal rights of transgender students in 2021. So we do have a Leader to Leader planned coming up in March on the 18th, and that's going to be with Jennifer Starlin from True & Law. So we will, of course, send out information about that, and you can register for that as well. But if that's something that you're addressing at your school and want to make sure that you're making, you know, that you're properly accommodating those students, please make a point to join us for that one as well. Thanks everyone for your time, and thank you so much to our awesome panel. You are much appreciated, and great job to you, Bob Kefgen. Appreciate you as well. And to Ryan Casey, who does a great job of recording all of these and keeping us all straight. So thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.